just to kind of run through some of the basic functionality of BriefCam and what it is that our software does. First and foremost, up here at the top, some of the things to point out to you is we have our timeline here, and in this particular timeline, it says 7:31 to 9:04. That happens to be the timeline we're working from in this particular view. Over here on the left-hand side is the number of cameras that we have on this particular case study. So you can have 1, you can have 100, you can have 1,000. It doesn't make any difference how many cameras you have over here. Essentially, you can do a search on all of your cameras at once if you would like to. But in this particular case, we have a timeline of about 1.5 hours. And if you look at all the objects here, they all have timestamps on them. These timestamps represent the time that this particular object travels through this particular timeline. So if I happen to click on this SUV towing a trailer over here, or this SUV that may be towing a trailer, you will actually see that particular vehicle travel through the scene and exactly when it does travel through the scene. And more importantly, you also notice that there's a lot more dead space in the overall view here. The reason for that is BriefCam is condensing the overall view from this 1.5 hours down to 8 minutes. And that by default is one of the first things that we do. We condense and take out all of the dead space. In addition to that, we are also identifying every possible detail that we can from every object traveling through the scene. And we give you the ability to identify any and every possible piece of information to help refine and extract the information faster from the video that you have. In this particular case, I'll pick red pickup trucks, and the system will then go through and look for every red pickup truck in this particular view and come up and show you the results. Now, I'll stop right here and I'll show you up here we have a number in green. This represents the actual number of objects that meet this criteria, being 46 that meet pickup and red, out of 3,918. This 3,918 represents the total number of objects in all 4 of these scenes, which is why this number happens to be different from this number. This is just 3,401 objects in this scene, and this is the overall number of objects over all 4 of them. Some of the other things that we can obviously do is, as you see here, we can even select motorcycle, and we can identify the number of motorcycles that are traveling through the scene as well. In this case, 22 out of that total number. Now, we give you a lot more ways to refine and extract the information quicker, including whether we identify certain characteristics and attributes, such as long pants, shorts, long sleeve or short sleeve hats, no hats, bags, backpacks, or handheld. We also give you the ability to adjust the tolerance level, being a little bit more loose or a little bit more strict, depending on your preference. So this gives you the ability to extract whatever kind of information, and I'll come over here and essentially select, as an example, let's pick a woman. And we'll be able to extract every woman crossing through the scene right there. Now, again, we can take it one step further. We can say we only want the people traveling northbound on this particular case, or we can pick colors, or we can specifically look for a certain person traveling at a certain speed. Let's say she's running. Whatever the case may be, we allow you the ability to identify all of those individuals traveling in this particular camera scene. Now, some of the other functionality that BriefCam also offers is we allow you to, let's close this down here, and I will open up this one here. We allow you to do searches over multiple different pictures, as I mentioned before. So if I come in here and I select bicycle, I can actually identify every single bicycle. And as I mentioned up here, this number here represents the total number, being 738, 535 on this particular view, 40 on here, 96 on here, and 67 on this one. And we can identify exactly how many bicycles appear in each of these particular scenes. So if I was to come in here and look at this and just run the synopsis view of just the traveling through the scene, this is what we look like. Now, we also have the ability to, as well, identify certain visual layers. Let's say we want to know exactly where the bikes are traveling through the scene. And we now can give you what we refer to as the common paths, or the paths marker. Now, this happens to be a gradient scale, so anything in blue is a smaller number, anything in red is the larger number, and you can see that this one red arrow represents a lot of bikes traveling that particular path. Now, with that said, again, if you want a different visual layer, you can look at the activity heat map, which gives you just something different to look at. Now, in addition to that, we also have one of our other visual layers being the dwell heat map. And since bicycles don't really work too well because most bikes don't happen to dwell, I'm going to select people and I'm going to apply this. And then I'm going to identify where the people are actually hanging out. Now, we can identify here that, yeah, we can understand there's going to be a lot of people walking up and stopping for traffic, but back here we see that there's a lot of people hanging out, and we see that by the gradient scale here. So this is just another way for which we can sit there and help to identify any number of, and extract any number of details from the overall video that you are collecting or that you have already recorded. So in many cases, we could sit here and take it one step further. We only want people in this particular area, and you can adjust this or see how people are traveling through, whatever the case may be. These are just different ways to extract those details. In addition to that, we also have a lot of other details, one of which is our newest feature, which is our facial recognition. The facial recognition is exactly as it sounds. It is just like every other facial recognition, except that we tackle something a little bit different. We actually are working from where the cameras are. Many different facial recognition companies focus on having a camera at a certain angle, certain height, certain lighting, certain distance, so that they can get the optimal position. We work from all of those same details, but we also provide you the tool for facial recognition to extract any faces that it can catch from any distance and any camera, however it's positioned, wherever it's positioned. In this particular case, I want to pick on Warren, and I will pull up every time that he appears in these two scenes. Now, as I mentioned, in the wild, what that means is, as I said before, any camera that we happen to see, in this particular case, we're not getting up close and personal. But if I sit here and look for any additional faces in this view, the system will actually tell me all of the faces that it can find. And I'm going to just select this particular camera here. Excuse me, wrong one. And as you can see, I'm able to capture every single one of these faces. So if I was looking for any of these individuals, I can say, hey, maybe I want to find out every time this guy pops up in the scene. I can come up here and say, show me the faces and the times that he happens to come in and out of this particular camera scene. And we can follow him throughout this entire thing. Now, the nice thing is that we're able to work and provide these details, even though it happens to be a pretty good distance away. And obviously we can see that he's definitely obscuring part of his face, and he is definitely not up close and personal like we would normally like to get for a good facial shot. But in this particular case, as you see here, and I'll pull up the original video here so you can see it, you actually see that he is quite a distance away. He is definitely got his face covered. You can definitely tell that we're not getting the most accurate shot on him, but we're still able to generally get a good recognition on him because we're getting enough pixels on the target to be able to identify him in the scene and every time he pops up. Now, again, the tolerance level is up to you. We do provide this as an additional tool. Is it 100% accurate? No, but it certainly will get you closer to being able to extract the information so you're not searching through hours on hours trying to find your particular person. Now, in addition to that, we also have several other features, one of which is called research. The research is, in fact, our interactive reporting tool. And to show you, and it looks like my system is having a heart attack. And it is. And to show you what that is it basically is, and you'll have to forgive me, I've been doing a lot of these over the course of the day, that research is our interactive reporting tool, and it is completely interactive. And the reason we love it so much now is because it has simplified a lot of the clients and end users' lives, because now we can sit here and use this as a business intelligence tool. So for all of those purposes of trying to identify certain characteristics, whether cities are trying to identify how many bikes are traveling down particular streets, as to whether that justifies adding a bike lane, whether you want to identify how many people are traveling across a crosswalk, or how many people are traveling through a particular intersection, all of this is well within your right, and you can sit there and break it out into any kind of format that you would choose. And we do provide a number of canned base sheets, but you can also create your own personalized sheets or reports that you would like to use for whatever information and present it however you would like. Generally speaking, though, you can see here that there is a lot of versatility to being able to take whatever information is being recorded already and being able to present it into any kind of a way that you want. In this particular view, this is kind of an interesting area because we actually went in and identified certain areas of the scene and drew little sections around them and identified them as bags, entrance, high heels, purses, sandals, and shoes. And by doing so, we can then say, well, now we can see where people were actually traveling, how many went into each of these areas, how long they were there, the maximum number per hour, the total number overall, and we can get a general idea of exactly what the movement was through any of these scenes. Now, this allows you to sometimes categorize and identify a lot of shoppers' behaviors, where they like to go. But remember, again, we allow you to also do the same exact principle in common paths, and I will show you exactly how it looks. And this is the area that we were talking about in some of the retail sections that we were identifying. High heels, up here we had purses, but we're able to identify where the people are actually walking through this particular retail section. But this could be something other than retail. It could be your business. It could be a intersection. It could be anything. Whatever you decide is important to you and your department, the information is readily available. In addition to that, we also do provide live alerts. And by live alerts, I mean as close to real time as it's possible. We are not Minority Report. We do not have any precogs, but we do give you the capability to identify certain criteria and characteristics that you're looking for. I created these just as a test platform: jaywalkers, cyclists on sidewalks, illegal U-turns, trucks driving north, etc. And to show you exactly what you get, these come in at whatever device in whatever way you choose, whether you want it emailed to you, whether you want it on some type of device, you want an alert in some fashion, form, or other. You decide how you want to receive these alerts, and we can then send this information to you that way. Now, with that said, this is one of the best parts of this system. We firmly believe in the motto KISS, or otherwise known as Keep It Simple, Stupid. The reason for that is because we realize that a lot of our users have enough that they're dealing with. They don't need to sit there and relearn a new system in order to do their job. So we have made it so simplified that it is literally this easy to sit there and create a rule. And I'm going to walk through, you give it a name, you identify a particular camera, You then wait for this to pop up and say, I am looking for anyone doing an illegal U-turn, but more specifically, I would just like to find out all the motorcycles that are doing an illegal U-turn. And then you create. That's as easy as we can possibly make it for you. And then it creates all of these, and you can then run them, get the alerts as you would like them to come in, etc. So this is how simplified we've now made it for you. And some of our different clientele, from cities and governments to airports to harbors to you name it, every single type of alert has been set up, from the possibility of cargo trucks and vans pulling up and parking for more than 30 seconds being an alert, so that there's no concern of a van showing up and blowing up, to looking for specific bolos. Somebody happens to identify someone of interest that they need to be on the lookout for. And so they send that information to either the group, and they create an alert for either that person or somebody matching their description or the description of a vehicle. All of these can be set up as alerts.
Eric, this is Ray. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Specifically regarding the alerts, if you have these rules created in BriefCam, and if you're using a compatible VMS, such as Milestone or one of the other ones that are compatible, will BriefCam send the alert to the VMS, so that whoever is connected to the VMS as like a security person who's monitoring these cameras, multiple people can get the alert in real time?
Yes. We actually are premier partners with Milestone. We do have some premier partners. Milestone is one of them, and yes, they do have an integration that provides for the alerts to come in through the VMS, and you will get them as they come in. So your personnel who are in whatever EOC or whatever group happens to be monitoring this will be receiving these alerts.
Okay, thank you.
Now, as far as some of the other capabilities and some of the other functionality, again, just to kind of run through and break down exactly what each and every piece has. So you do have the ability to identify specifically which camera you want to use. You have the ability to identify time range. You have all of these classifications, and we are continually adding new classifications as time progresses. We will be adding a lot of new features and functionality to the system, and the great news is that it is all going to be added to our clientele at no cost, which is really quite a benefit to them. Then, of course, we happen to have the attributes, which, like I said before, long sleeve, short sleeve, hats, no hats, etc., as you can see here. But the very interesting part that I didn't happen to touch upon is also one that I really do want to touch upon, and it's appearance similarity. In this particular case, for anything that we don't happen to have a, let's say, criteria for yet, let's say in this particular case, I'm looking at this view right here of intersection 1, and I happen to be looking through here and say, hey, maybe I'm looking for any vehicle that travels in front of a bush or shrub. That happens to be what I'm looking for. So I come down here, I can set the appearance similarity and apply. And now any vehicle that happens to travel through and in front of any kind of a bush, maybe that was what I was looking for. And it's going to now identify every vehicle that does that. And to show you, every single one of these will identify that. So appearance similarity is an extremely powerful tool if you are looking for something but not quite sure of what it is. It doesn't fit any of these classifications. It doesn't fit any of these attributes, but you certainly want to identify this behavior. You now have the potential to sit there and use appearance similarity to identify this behavior and look for it. So this is an extremely powerful tool as a I guess a all-encompassing, all-powered search for whatever else we don't have specifically classified.
Does
and
appearance,
it's one thing that.
does appearance similarity also apply to, for example, people walking through a crowded area who are wearing hats and glasses? Would you be able to filter
Yes.
that way? Okay.
Yes, and appearance similarity, what it will do is it will start to identify everyone who happens to fit that bill. So it will look for people in general walking through that particular section, that area, people wearing hats, people wearing glasses, people doing both. It will identify all of that information as similar traits and behaviors. So it does absolutely work in that regard.
Regarding the facial recognition, when you're searching for a particular face, let's say the suspect uh, put a hat on and or put some kind of head covering on, like a hoodie, for example, to try to avoid cameras. Will the software, will BriefCam allow you to show results before he put the head covering on and after, or is it just going to show you the facial results before he put the head covering on?
No, the head covering doesn't make any difference to us because we're not looking necessarily at the hair. We're looking at the facial structure just as every other facial detection system does. It is analyzing the overall face, and whether they put a hat on or not, it doesn't make any difference because their face is still the same. So we are identifying based on the face, not the clothes, not the hat, not any other detail. The facial recognition is always looking for the same exact piece, which is just the dimensions, the specifics to that particular face. So for all intents and purposes, they can put a hood on, they can put a hoodie on, they can you know, obscure their hairdo or do whatever they want to do, put new clothes on, but their face is going to remain the same. The only exception to that, obviously, is if somebody does cover their face with a scarf. So that being obvious exception, but needs to at least be stated.
What if they
Now,
what if they change their hair color? It still wouldn't matter.
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay, as long as their
Still
face
wouldn't make
is
any difference.
not covered. Got it.
Yep, and it's definitely of value because we have had examples where people have changed their hair color and we're still picking them out. And at first we thought it was an anomaly that it was picking up the same person with two different hair colors, and then we realized it was actually the same person.
What if they put on like large sunglasses? Would that change anything?
It depends on obviously how much of their face is obscured, but if we're still able to get the overall dimensions and structure of the face, and if it happens to be close enough, it will pick it up, and our system will actually identify it as a potential. Normally, one thing that I will tell you is that with all of these, what we end up doing is we get all of these different thumbnails, and the way the BriefCam works is the most likely to meet the criteria are at the forefront, the first portion of the thumbnails, and then as you start going down, it goes to the more or the least likely. And so in that particular case with the facial recognition, you'll have your most likely hits, and then you'll have possible hits, and then possibly the least likely hits as you go and scroll down. So if you are looking for somebody and they do have their face covered by some pretty large sunglasses, it still may capture, depending on obviously the sunglasses, but it still may capture. It might just list it as a lesser likely possibility, and then you can then decide based on your input.
Understood. Thank you.
One thing that I will also say, and this happens to be one of our oldest videos that we collected from one of the groups that we worked with. They had identified a wine thief, and the easiest way for us to search for the particular area was to just simply say, okay, show me who interacts with anything in this particular area. And the nice part is that from a very quick second, it takes no time to be able to identify the actual suspect. And as you can see here, this is roughly the timeline that I'm working with is 5:08 p.m. to 7:47, so roughly around maybe 2.5 hours-ish. And I was able to pick out very quickly that first person in the first 10 seconds. And it picks up the most likely, those who actually interacted with the stuff here, and then it works its way through the lesser likely as you start going through. So the fastest way for us to be able to identify anybody is to use the BriefCam to forensically extract the information, whether you're trying to present it into a business intelligence tool for other departments within your organization, you are trying to set up live alerts, you are trying to just create a base for all the information that you are collecting, whatever and however you wish to use the system. The tools are here for you to be able to do that. So do you have any questions so far?
No, everything is very straightforward. If we have, let's say, someone who has multiple locations, for example, let's say we're working with like a furniture store, or department store, and they have multiple locations, they would need a server at every location, or is there a cloud-based option that would allow them to use the video from every location on the one cloud-based server?
That essentially depends on the design of the clients. If they have, as an example, if they happen to be a client where they have multiple individual stores and they save their camera video locally and do not send it into the headquarters, then it might be necessary to be creative on the design. But normally, we would probably recommend having a server wherever the VMS is. So if obviously we're talking about an organization that has all of their video and they have a VMS, but its VMS is sending all of that information to a centralized location, then we only need to have one server. But if we have segmented departments or segmented locations that are autonomous, then you would probably have, depending on the number of servers that you might need or the number of locations, you might want to have a smaller server at each location, or however you'd like to do it. I mean, we're very versatile in how the system is designed. There are many clients who have a centralized hub and have BriefCam loaded on a server at that centralized location, and they just feed the cameras to that centralized location. And there are other clients who have a server at multiple locations so that they don't have to eat up the bandwidth and send a whole bunch of video over their network. So it really is very different for each individual.
Understood. Okay, well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the demo.
No worries.